It's Mad Dog Sports Radio, weekend edition. My name is Jake Asman, and we continue here on Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. And joining me right now is one of my favorite guests when it comes to the NFL, the host of the Ross Tucker podcast. You watch him on CBS, you listen to him on Westwood One. He is Ross Tucker. Ross, always appreciate your time. And thank you for being one of my first guests here on Mad Dog Sports Radio.
I love it. I'm honored, Jake. I'm a big fan of Mad Dog Sports Radio, whether it's Mad Dog or Shine or my guy DA in the morning now. So pretty awesome, man. Pretty special that you're getting a chance to do shows now. Well deserved with everything you've done, both on the radio side and the digital side. I'm pumped. I'm pumped to be on here with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we got a lot to talk about. I want to dive right into the news yesterday that the Washington Commanders have officially hired Dan Quinn as their head coach. So we'll start there. What's your level of surprise? Are you surprised that ultimately the Commanders end up going with Quinn in Washington?
No. Well, I am a little surprised because I did think that when it took this long that they were clearly probably waiting in my mind for Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick. I kind of felt like both those guys had a history with Adam Peters, the new GM, who Washington hired first. I guess he's worked with both of them in the past. And I just think, it makes sense, right? I mean, you look at the track record of Mike McDaniel and Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. You go right down the line, right? It just to make sense to have a guy from that tree. And interestingly, Ben Johnson's not from that tree, but man, he gives off a lot of those vibes when you watch the Lions play. So I don't know what happened there. I mean, there's some thought that he didn't think he was going to get the job, so he pulled out, but the Commanders were on a plane on their way to Detroit. So I don't really understand how that makes sense. So I don't really know what happened there. I know this. I am a fan of Dan Quinn as a coach. I mean, I know they didn't finish the job. I get it, right? But he got the Atlanta Falcons to the Super Bowl, man. And they're up 28-3 in that game. And so he deserves a ton of credit for that. And I thought he did a really good job the last couple of years as the Cowboys defensive coordinator. People don't like any guy that's ever been fired before, it seems like. You know what I mean? Like they always want the new guy with the idea that he'll be a guy that never gets fired. Listen, they all get fired. Pete Carroll got fired. Bill Belichick got fired. Bill Belichick now basically got fired twice. They're calling the most recent one a mutual parting, but not really. He wanted to stay. They didn't want him anymore. So no matter how good you are, people at times get fired and you got to move on and you got to realize, you know what? These guys deserve a second chance, I think. And a lot of them, like Pete Carroll and like Bill Belichick, do well with that second chance. So I think that that's a really good sign for him as well.
Ross Tucker is my guest here on Mad Dog Sports Radio, former NFL offensive lineman, host of the Ross Tucker podcast. And of course, you can listen to him on Westwood One and watch him on CBS. So, Ross, you mentioned Bill Belichick. That's where I want to go next. So, you have all the vacancies in the NFL filled up. 5 of those vacancies are filled up by defensive minded guys. None of those guys are Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel. Are you surprised that all 3 of those guys did not get another opportunity during this hiring cycle?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. In particular, I guess I really thought Vrabel, you can make an argument against Carroll and Belichick on the age thing, but Vrabel, I thought, was universally considered one of the top 10 coaches in the NFL over the last 5 years. And I know they had a down year in Tennessee this year, but I thought he was one of the guys, the rare guys that would get hired right away. I do think that, part of what happened here is that what we saw was these owners do not want head coaches that want a lot of control. I think that's kind of my big takeaway. Vrabel, it feels like in Tennessee, had something of a power struggle down there. He wanted more control. He didn't get it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't get hired these other places. I think that they thought, well, he just got in an issue with Rand Carthon and, he wanted more control. What GM is going to sign off on wanting to hire a head coach that, wants more control, wants to have a say? That's not what you want if you're the GM. You don't want to hire that guy. Belichick, clearly, I think the same story in Atlanta. And so I think that's a big part of it. I'm not shocked about the Belichick part, primarily because, I've been on a lot of stations, different cities, whether it's Atlanta or Charlotte or DC. Jake, they didn't want him. I mean, a lot of fan bases did not want him, whether it's the negativity, whether it's the way the last few years have gone. It was like 75% did not want him, maybe 25% did. And that's tough for an owner to bring a guy in. And, part of the reason we get a new head coach is you want excitement and new people buying season ticket packages and all that stuff. Well, that's not happening if the fans don't want him.
Ross, do you think Belichick ever coaches again?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. In fact, I think that very shortly that we'll be in a situation where he's going to do so well in the media, Jake. People are going to be so surprised that he has some personality and shows some insight. He never does that because he's talking about his team and he thinks it's a competitive disadvantage. Well, I think he's going to be in the media for a year and people are going to forget. People have really short attention spans, short memories. They're going to like him on TV. And some of the same fan bases that wouldn't want him this year will want him a year from now because they'll be, oh, he's the greatest coach of all time and he's funny and he said this and I like him. So I think he'll get hired next year. I really do. He desperately wants to break Shula's record. So even if next year he has to just go to be a coach somewhere and not have as much power or control, I think he does it.
Ross Tucker is my guest. Ross, I know we got to run, but I got to ask you a couple questions about the Super Bowl and then what you're doing with my front page story. You were on the sidelines for that AFC Championship game last week. We got the Super Bowl matchup set. It's a rematch of the game from 4 years ago now with the Chiefs and the Niners. Give me your early thoughts on this matchup. I know we still got a week and change to go, but when you look at the matchups here, what are some of the things that immediately stand out to you?
Well, I mean, listen, I have that betting podcast, the Even Money Betting Podcast, and what stands out to me, Jake, why are the 49ers favored in this game? Like what are people watching? I mean, the Chiefs, I thought it were the better team in all three playoff games, including at Buffalo and at Baltimore. The Niners, I'm not so sure they were the better team in either one of those games. I mean, I can give you 6 plays off the top of my head that if they went the other way, the Packers would have beat them. And the Lions were dominating them until the Lions peed down their leg, and had one of the most epic meltdowns we've seen. And even if it's a close game, you're taking Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan over Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in a close game. I don't get it. I mean, I love the Chiefs in this game. Maybe the Niners win, and that'd be great for them. But if they played 10 Super Bowls between the Chiefs and I feel like the Chiefs win 7 or 8 of them.
You played with Tom Brady. Now we're watching Patrick Mahomes do things that even Tom Brady at the beginning of his career has not done. If Mahomes were to win another Super Bowl, Ross, is he on his way to being possibly the greatest of all time?
Well, he's had the greatest start to a career of all time, that's for sure. He's the greatest 28-year-old quarterback we've ever seen. The problem is that Brady gets you on the longevity, right? Like Mahomes is going to have to do it without Travis Kelce pretty soon here. And then he's going to have to do it without Andy Reid probably pretty soon here. So that will be very impressive. Brady basically did it with, like the Vrabels and McGinnis and those guys. And then he did it again with the Gronks and the Edelmans and those guys. And they did it in Tampa. So that's going to be the real issue for Mahomes. Plus, if he starts to lose his mobility a little bit, that'll be a factor. And it wasn't at all for Brady because he had no mobility.
Ross Tucker is my guest, former NFL offensive lineman, host of the Ross Tucker podcast. You watch him on CBS Sports, listen to him on Westwood One, and he's also involved in one of the coolest gifts that you could give to someone close to you during Valentine's Day coming up. Ross, you've told me about this over the years, but tell my audience here on Bad Dog Sports Radio all about myfrontpagestory.com. And for those who can't see the video right now, Ross is actually holding up a full-on display of what my front page is all about. So, Ross, take it away.
Well, listen, Jake, you're still young. You're probably not married. Might not even have a girlfriend. There's guys like me. Okay, I've been married almost 20 years. I do the same thing every year. It's like a gift card, or maybe take her out dinner or flowers. Don't be like me. My buddy started this company. It's called myfrontpagestory.com. You talk to one of their writers on the phone for 10 minutes, or you can fill out an email if you prefer. Tell them how great your significant other is. They write the most unbelievable story. It looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper. It's framed, beautiful pictures of them and you together. And Jake, just to be able to say to her, hon, I wanted something special this year. So I had a story written about you. That sounds incredible. Like incredible. Highly recommend it. It's myfrontpagestory.com, myfrontpagestory.com. And then they'll have it hanging up in the house forever. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. I cannot highly recommend it enough. All you got to do, fellas, is change it up like once every 5 years. Do it this year. myfrontpagestory.com.
Check it out. It is an awesome, awesome gift for your significant other. Ross, always great to catch up. Thanks so much for coming on, and get ready for a week of Taylor Swift hype and everything else that comes with the Super Bowl.
Hey, I'm here for it. Appreciate it. See you, Jake.